What's up, everyone, and Merry Christmas. It's Matt from Surfcitytcg here with something special for you, announcing the first annual SURFIES, the 2024 awards that I created for my channel, Surfcitytcg. Please like, subscribe, follow, comment, blah, 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 if you haven't done so already. And if you have, thank you, I love you. So I decided, rather than do a traditional end of year list, which is like best cards of the year or something like that, I would go with this sort of Oscar style list. I've created several categories here. In fact, 20 or 21 in total. And we're going to go through each of the cards I have nominated. It was very hard to make this list. There were a lot of cards. First of all, there were a lot of cards that came out this year, period. And of the cards that came out, a lot of them were very, very good. So it was quite difficult to narrow this down, but I've done as best I could given the resources I have, and I hope you like it. And if you feel like I should have done something differently, or I got something wrong, or I left something out, I want to hear from you. So please let me know. I'm always open and willing to hear constructive criticism, so please let me know. And I can improve this for next year's SURFIES, the second annual SURFIES. So without any further ado, I say let's dive in. For those that are new to my channel, this is for Commander purposes, EDH, Ultra Dragon, Highlander, and the style in which I typically play and the way that my decks are built is usually at around a power level 7 to 8, and typically playing with no infinites. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't play with infinites or you can't play more powerful decks, but that will be the lens through which I am viewing these cards. So I don't play really any CEDH, and I don't play much ultra high power or ultra low power Commander. So this is all going to be through the lens of a like mid power, typically no infinites, and very optimized deck lists, but within those constraints. So that being said, let's start off with the first category. And I've gone ahead and lumped a couple things together here. So we're going with protection and fog spells. So these are spells that can either protect your life total, they can protect your board, they protect you in some way, and I've kind of used my discretion to lump some things in here potentially. So let's talk about each one of these, and then I will announce the winner of this category. So starting off with Brotherhood Regalia. This is from the Assassin's Creed Universes Beyond set. It's an equipment for 2 mana. The equip cost is 3 for any creature, or equip 1 on a legendary creature. And it gives the creature ward, makes them an assassin in addition to their other types, which is not irrelevant, as we'll talk about later in this video. And it makes it so the creature can't be blocked. So, I mean, this is basically a strict upgrade of Whispersilk Cloak. I love Whispersilk Cloak. I love playing it. In 2024, heading into 2025, it just feels a little slow. And Shroud, while great, often, feels like a liability versus something like Hexproof or Ward. And just to clarify, Shroud means you can't target that thing that has Shroud with anything. You can't, your opponents can't, no one can. So if you wanted to put another equipment on your creature wearing a Whispersilk Cloak, for example, you couldn't do that because it has Shroud, unless you had some way to like cheat it on. But in normal equipping, you can't. You just couldn't do that. So the fact that this gives Ward 2, it's not as good of a protection as Shroud is, but the cheaper equip cost, the cheaper casting cost, the fact that it makes it an assassin, the fact that it still makes it unblockable, I think just makes this a much better card than Whispersilk Cloak in this day and age. Dawn's Truce. So this has the gift a card mechanic, meaning as you cast it, you can choose an opponent to get to draw a card if the spell resolves. So if the spell gets countered, opponent that you chose does not get to draw the card. But if it does resolve, then whoever you chose gets to draw a card, and then you get a bonus effect. So in this case, you and your permanents gain hexproof until end of turn. That happens regardless. But if you gifted, then also your permanents yet indestructible until end of turn. So this is basically a heroic intervention in white, but it requires you to gift a card to an opponent. And it also protects you, so it gives you hexproof, which is mostly irrelevant, but you'll find that it comes up here and there. One common example off the very top of my head is Blood Artist, which targets. So if you have hexproof, you can't be targeted. Hexproof does stop, your opponents from targeting you with nasty stuff. So Dawn's Truce can protect you from a lethal Blood Artist bloodbath, so to speak. And, that's not irrelevant, because if there's a huge gummed up board and you want to cast a Vanquish the Horde, blow everything up, and you want to hold priority and cast a Dawn's Truce so none of your stuff gets blown up, then all those Blood Artist triggers from everyone else's creatures dying cannot be sent at you with the Dawn's Truce resolving, assuming you gifted the card. So nice little trick here. I don't know, I don't want to give it away, but I feel like there's so many great white protection spells nowadays. I always tend to look toward, obviously, the OG and go is Teferi's Protection, T-Pro. But, even if you wanted another one, I still prefer cards like Galadriel's Dismissal or Clever Concealment, stuff that can really protect your board against the nastiest board wipes like Farewell and Cyclonic Rift, which Dawn's Truce, does nothing against. And there's lots of protection spells that don't do anything against those cards, which is why they're so powerful. It doesn't mean that this is not a playable card. It's just that in my most optimized deck lists, I never find myself personally making room for this, even though I do feel like it is one of the best protection/fog spells of the year. Moving on to Flare of Fortitude. This is from a whole cycle of free, quote-unquote, free to cast spells, pitch spells, in other words, from Modern Horizons 3. This one says you may sacrifice a non-token white creature rather than paying the spell's mana cost, which is a great line of text. Too bad it says non-token, of course. It would be really, really good, and all of them would be ultra good if you could sack tokens, but that's okay. White sometimes has expendable creatures you can just toss away, and oftentimes, even if you have to sack your commander to do this, it can be worth it because your life total can't change until end of turn, and your permanents gain hexproof and indestructible. So this is a neat one because it's like a fog plus a heroic intervention style effect smushed into one effect. So this feels a lot more like a Teferi's Protection than Dawn's Truce does, to be honest. And, if it were just between these two cards, I would say Flare of Fortitude gets it hands down. Even though it costs more unless you're sacking the token, I think the versatility is very powerful, and the fact that you can cast this for free sometimes is ultra strong. So really good card. One that I haven't played enough of yet. I want to play more of it, but anytime I run into it, it feels like it's always a blowout in the caster's favor. So great little card, and the fact that it's down. By the way, I have this sorted to lowest price via TCGplayer. So on Moxfield, I just updated to cheapest. So right now, as of today, which is December 25th, this is the lowest prices per TCGplayer. So, for little over $3, this can't be beat. I would play Flare of Fortitude over Dawn's Truce unless you really, really don't have anything you want to sack. You're running a Voltron deck, maybe Dawn's Truce is going to be better for you. But in general, if it's close, I like Flare of Fortitude. Next on the list is Haystack. This is a cute little incidental one from Assassin's Creed that many people might have missed. It's a 2-mana artifact, and it has one line of text. It says, 2, tap, target creature you control phases out. That's it. What is phasing, you might ask? Well, the helpful reminder text here tells you a little bit. Treat it and anything attached to it as though they don't exist until your next turn. So it's like a Teferi's Protection on one thing. So your commander is a high-value target. You're playing a Voltron deck. Whatever the case may be, this saves it, and it saves it from anything. They can't bounce it. They can't remove it. They can't exile it. Unless they respond to you phasing it out, but then they would have to do it twice. But this is such a powerful effect. If you haven't played this card or you haven't played against it, try it out. You will be shocked. For 28 cents, this is a bargain. This card is ultra powerful. Nothing feels as good as having this in play, having the mana up for it. And like, yeah, it sucks. You got to leave 2 mana up all the time. But like, if you're playing a Voltron deck and like it's between that, like slowing yourself down to keep this up and losing your commander and potentially like all of the equipment and or auras that are attached to it, trust me, the 2 mana is worth it. This is not a card to play in every single deck, but if you have a high value creature that you like really want to make sure doesn't die, doesn't get Psych Rifted, doesn't get Farewelled, and not only does it protect the creature, because of how phasing works, it protects everything that's on it too. So if you're playing that, like, what is the name of that aura commander? Can't think of it right now for whatever reason. Light Paws. If you're playing Light Paws and Light Paws has like 8,000 auras on it, like he tend to do, then you haystack him, all of those auras phased out too, protected, right? They can cast a Tranquility, like, how's that for a moldy reference? And you can respond by phasing out Light Paws, even though he was not going to be affected by the Tranquility. All of the auras that were on him were, but now he's phased out, and so are all those auras. Same goes for equipment. Really powerful card. Recommend you try it out if you haven't. Silver Shroud Costume, another one from Fallout. This is a cool card. It's got Flash for 2 mana. When it enters, it attaches automatically. So you get 1 equip for free. So that equip 3 is a little expensive, but you get the first equipment for free, and it's got Flash. So naturally, it just gives the creature unblockable, and that's all it does, except for the turn that it enters, it also gives a creature Shroud. So I mentioned earlier that Shroud's not so great because like a lot of times you want to be targeting it, but for a single turn, single like one-time effect, this is an excellent card. Like if you care about unblockability in your deck, then this is a strictly better version of something like Tamiyo's Safekeeping, Tyvar's Stand, what's the white one? Blacksmith Skill. I would play this instead, especially if you care about that unblockability part, which is pretty useful in a lot of different decks. So this is a great card, and you can see for the price tag at Uncommon, this is a good one. Here's another one that a lot of people might have missed. In fact, I don't, I've played hundreds of games this year, and I have not seen a single person play this card except for me. But it's so good. This is Suppressor Skyguard. It's 4 mana in Azorius colors, 2 white and a blue. It's a human knight, 2/4 flying, and it says, whenever a player attacks you, if that player has another opponent who's not being attacked, prevent all damage that would be dealt to you this combat. So let me translate, because that is pretty confusing, and you're going to have to translate for your opponents because it's kind of hard to grasp. What this essentially means is if your opponents are not sending an attacker at everyone, including you, so if you have 4 players in the game, they must be sending at least 1 creature at every player, so 3 different players, in order for their creatures to be able to hit you. If that condition is not met, any creatures that are sent at you are fogged. They deal no combat damage. So if you've got a 10/10 coming at you, and you've got 3 opponents. So there's player 1, 2, 3, 4. You're player 4. Player 1 is attacking you with a 10/10, and they're attacking player 3 with a 10/10. Their 10/10 does nothing to you because they did not send anything at player 2. So they must send at least 1 creature at every player in order for creatures to deal damage to you. Opponents are not affected by this. So this essentially just dissuades attacks from you altogether. Like if you're playing Azorius colors and you're running something like Windborn Muse or even Propaganda, like if you care about having a creature, Propaganda is better sometimes because like it's safer. Creatures don't want to get blown up, but like I play this on my Knights deck, for example, because it's a Knight. And if you care about having flyers, if you care about having creatures because you want to deal damage or you want to equip them, excellent card. Really happy with the performance of this little guy. Highly recommend you try it out. All right, last one on the list is a land. Not normally one we would see in the protection fog category, but this is a nice little guy from Modern Horizons Commander. And we're going to be seeing a lot of Modern Horizons 3 cards on this list, I tell you what. So Talon Gates and Madara is a gate, first of all, which I don't particularly care about, but it might be relevant in the future, or if you're playing like a Gates deck, which I haven't done yet, but maybe someday. But I play this anyway because it's really good. So it's a colorless land. All it does is make colorless. Well, you can tap one. You could put 1 mana into it to make a color. So basically costs you a mana, but you could generate a color if you need it, which comes up. Trust me, like that is not irrelevant. And then it's got this ETB that says when it enters, up to 1 target creature phases out. Have we talked about phasing before? I feel like we just did like 3 cards ago. Yeah, phasing is probably one of the most busted mechanics in Magic. You know, it's originally from like Visions or Mirage, one of those sets in the like Mirage block, which is like the second block ever or something like that. So this is a mechanic that's been around forever, and it was super weird at the time, and it's like equally weird now. And equally powerful. I'm very surprised that they keep printing stuff with phasing because it's just so weird and hard to understand for newer players. But like one thing I love about Magic, among many things, is that like they don't shy away from making things complex if they feel like it's a useful and fun mechanic that like adds to the game. So I do like phasing, and this can, as a land, when it enters, phase out any creature. So what does that mean? Like how does that help us? And it also, let's not ignore the last line, although I have only used that last ability once, which is 4 mana, put it from your hand onto the battlefield. So first of all, before we get into anything else, this is ramp. This is colorless ramp. So like if you want to spend 4 mana to just drop in a land from your hand, you can do that. And that is an option. I wouldn't recommend it unless you have like literally nothing else to do, as I feel like the ETB of this is going to be a lot better and more useful than just having a random colorless land in play. The way you want to play this is either so the most common way you're going to play this is you're going to draw it and you're going to have to play it as a land drop because you just don't have any other lands you can play. And that's okay, trust me. Like you need with a card like this, you just need to accept that the regular case is that you're going to have to draw and just play this, and you might not even have any great targets. It does say up to 1 target creature, so you don't have to phase anything out. It oftentimes won't be good for you to phase something out. Like either you can phase out an opponent's creature, and you know, I don't know if I can't remember if I mentioned this, but with phasing, it comes back on your untap step. So like normally nothing happens in your untap step except you untapping, except for phasing. And, you know, it might technically be a different part, but if you just remember that it's during your untap step, it's before your upkeep. Now, why does that matter? Let's say you've got a card like Felidar Sovereign, which I don't recommend playing. I think it's dumb, but, you know, let's say you disagree with me and you like playing Felidar Sovereign. And you're like, I'm going to win the game, and, you know, I'm going to gain 5 life, play Felidar Sovereign, and then winning the game on my upkeep. And then your opponent's like, I don't think so. Like, I'm going to destroy that creature so you don't win the game on your upkeep, which is valid. But let's say sneaky you has a crop rotation in your hand, and you're like, oh, I think I'm going to cast a crop rotation in response to your Deadly Rollick. Is that cool? And they're like, why are you doing this? And you're like, don't worry about it. I just want to see what I have. Boom! Talon Gates of Madara. Phase out my Felidar Sovereign. Okay. Well, my Deadly Rollick fizzles. That sucks. But at least your Felidar Sovereign is gone, right? And, you know, you're not going to get it back until, comes back during your untap step? So that means, okay, Felidar Sovereign comes back while I'm untapping, and then I move to the beginning of my upkeep, at which point, oh no. Yeah, it does work that way. Pretty gross. So that's one way to use this card. You can also just hold up 4 mana, use it as protection spell. Someone tries to hit your commander, boom, phase it out. What I like to do sometimes is if I'm playing it as a normal land drop on my turn, I'll use a valuable but fragile creature. I'm looking at you, Bloom Tender, for example. So boom, tap Bloom Tender for 3 colorless mana, or 3 mana of any color. And then, okay, I got to play a land for turn. I'm going to play this Talon Gates. I'm going to phase out my Bloom Tender. So yeah, it's gone until my next turn. What does that mean? Protected from any board wipes, protected from any sorcery speed removal. Very valuable. You won't always see the benefit of it because an opponent just can't target it. It's not there, right? But maybe they would have. Maybe it would have gotten caught up in a board wipe. You're not necessarily going to know the benefit of this, but it is a very, very strong card. So that's the protection fog category. So without further ado, let's announce the winner. The winner is, drumroll, really hard one here. I went with Haystack. I love this card. It is so much more powerful than it looks. It's so innocuous looking, which is like it's part of the name, you know. It's a haystack. Like, I didn't play any Assassin's Creed, but I assume like haystacks are common and they're places where you can hide to make sure that the guards can't see you. Based on the art, I was able to figure that out. I'm so smart. Anyway, really good card. Highly recommend you play it. It's good. Really good. Let's move on to the next category, graveyard hate. Lots of graveyard shenanigans going on lately, right? Sometimes you just need these pieces to make it so that that Golgari deck can't just go ham and like get you all messed up. So let's talk about the first card. This is Abstergo Entertainment. This is a legendary land from Assassin's Creed. Lots of Assassin's Creed representation already. Not, kind of a maligned set for the like little mini packs, and people don't think Universes Beyond and blah, blah, blah. But a great set in terms of content. Like, I loved a lot of the cards in that set, as you will see. And this was not a weak year in terms of what came out. And still, we have a lot of power from the Assassin's Creed set. So Abstergo Entertainment is a colorless land, could also tap for 1, tap it to make any color, just like we saw in Talon Gates of Madara. And then it's got a third ability, which is 3, tap, exile it. So no looping it, but that's okay. Return up to 1 historic land from your graveyard to your hand, and then exile all graveyards. So this is like a scavenger ground, but it's got a couple of bonuses. It could filter into a mana of any color by paying a 1 mana tax. And you can pay 1 extra mana, exile it, and you get to, like, it's like a Buried Ruin, kind of, except you can get other stuff back too, right? Buried Ruin only gets back to artifacts. That can get back any historic card. And just as a reminder, historic cards are either artifacts, legendaries, or sagas. So those are the 3 card types you can get back from your graveyard with this, and then boom, all graveyards get exiled. So this is a potential switch out for Scavenger Ground. I wouldn't switch, you could switch Buried Ruin out for this too, but I like replacing Scavenger Ground with this in a deck that doesn't care about their own graveyard. So, that's a deck you're typically running Scavenger Ground in anyway. One that you don't care about exiling your own graveyard, or maybe you don't care as much as your opponents. So this is a cool one. I want to do a little more testing of it, but it seems quite good. I think it will hold up well over the course of time. Bogart Trawler. This little fella, Goblin, 3 mana, 3/1. This is an MDFC land. MDFC stands for Modal Dual-Faced Card. It's like, let's see. Oh, yeah. So, front side is a 3/1 goblin that exiles a target player's graveyard when it enters. So just like a Bojuka Bog. And then the backside is just a black land that can enter untapped if you pay 3 life. So this cycle of MDFCs from Modern Horizons 3, some of the best, if not the best cards of the year by far. All of them are excellent. Every single one of them. There's literally not a bad one among them. I'm talking about the ones that enter untapped if you pay 3 life. The ones that enter tapped, they can be good too, but they're not as good. I'm not in love with the things that enter tapped. I just don't find them to be worth running unless they're exceptionally powerful. But this guy, this is just straight up replacement for Bojuka Bog. Like, you could run both. Potentially. You probably should. But if you don't want to, this is the guy right here. Like, it's just so good. And I love that you can play these as the land side and then bounce it later when you need it with any like Ravnica bounce land or various other effects that can bounce land to your hand. Just such a powerful and flexible effect. Like this is an auto include in every black deck for the rest of time. Period. Ghost Vacuum. Kind of a meme card, but I think it's pretty good. Like I haven't tested it yet, but just seems like very powerful. Now, like is there better artifact graveyard hate? Yes, there is. Relic of Progenitus, Soul Guide Lantern. There's tons of them. Tormod Script. Like there are tons of good graveyard, anti-graveyard artifacts. But if your deck cares about, first of all, this is a cool card. I might just play it over one of those just because it's sweet. In fact, this would 100,000,000% be in my Glarb deck if it wasn't 1 mana, which is a weird thing to say for any other deck but Glarb. But like, I don't want to run any spells that are less than 4 mana unless they're like absolutely essential. And even those I'm starting to cut. Like I cut Soul Ring recently. So that'll tell you what you need to know about like that. But this card seems cool. Like it's just an incidental value piece that like can like pick off key graveyard pieces. If people forget this is out and they try to like animate dead or reanimate something, you just wreck their day. And like in response, I'll exile that target. And they're just like, oh my God, can I take that back? And then you probably have to say yes or just be a dick and hold them to it. I don't know. I would say yes. But like, I'd probably just remind them. I'd be like, before you do that, did you remember I had this? And they're like, what's that? It's not my responsibility to know what's on the board. I'm like, oh yeah, it's not. Right. I forgot. We're not playing a game. Anyway, I'm going to stop going off on a tangent here. I think this card's cool. It exiles a bunch of stuff. It starts to get pretty scary, right? Like once if your opponent's got this and then like they exiled like a Bogart Trawler and then they exiled a Rex Sage and then they exiled a Wood Elves and then like just all this little stuff that's not really that valuable, but then all of a sudden they're going to activate this and get a bunch of 1/1s that get all those ETBs. It seems kind of cool and fun. I like it. And you can get it with Urza Saga, which is pretty cool. The big boy, Valgavoth Terror Eater. 9 mana, 9/9 flying lifelink. Ward. Look at that ward. Sacrifice 3 non-land permanents. That's a tough one. I mean, I still think Sauron's ward is better, but this is a close one. If a card you didn't control would put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. Where have we seen that text before? Gothy Voidwalker? Yes. Except, you can pay all those cards for free. You have to pay life, unlike Dothy. But, unlike Dothy, you can play all of them. This card is so much more powerful than I realized. Like, the first time I played against it in my real life pod, we just got honed by it. It was so good. It's just like, how do you deal with it? You need a board wipe or it's over. Like, all of a sudden, he had a hand of basically like 20 cards because everything that dies just gets eaten by it. And then, like, it's just like, no, what are we supposed to do? And then it has lifelink on top of it. Just so good. Such a cool card. I'd want to play more of it. I just want to. It's so fun and really good. And then we've got Vren the Relentless. This is a card I did not give enough credit to until I died to it like 3 times in a row because it gets out of hand so fast. It's just like they're playing a bunch of sack effects and you can't keep a board, and all of a sudden he's got like 12 rats, and you're like, okay, but maybe my dice triggers will save me. Just kidding. Dice triggers are all turned off. This is a replacement effect, just like Valgavoth, just like Dothy Voidwalker. None of those dice triggers happen when this boy is out. Very, very annoying to play against, and very, very powerful. But we can only choose one winner, and drum roll, please. It's Bogart Trawler. This card's just insane. Like, if you don't have 4 to 10 copies of this already at $2 a piece, you better get them now because this is going to be a $5 uncommon, maybe 10. Depends if it's reprinted. If this is never reprinted, this price is going to go up and up and up and up and up. And you're going to wish you paid $2 instead of 20 in a year or 2 years, maybe. Bogart Trawler, MVP of Graveyard Hate. Easy. Okay. Now, what if your opponent forgets to pack the Graveyard Hate? Now comes the Reanimation. Number 1, Chthonian Nightmare. Hey, it's Cthulhu. Look, he's in Modern Horizons 3. Chthonian Nightmare, so all you old school players know what this is a reference to. It's that fun and terrifying, oh my god, this card gives me PTSD, recurring nightmare from way back in, was it Stronghold? Exodus. Exodus, such a powerful set. Also gave us Oath of Druids. Man, Exodus was like the ultimate in power sets back in the day. Like it turned extended like slash type 1.5 into a monster of a thing. Especially once we got Morphling, and oh my god, it was just game over from there. But anyway, I digress. Chthonian Nightmare is not recurring nightmare. However, it's shockingly close. This card is so good. I didn't think it was as good as it is. It gets out of control so quickly. Like it's a sack outlet. It's a reanimation spell, and it just keeps coming back. And like if they have a cost, like if your opponent's got a jet, if you have a jet medallion out and you have Chthonian Nightmare, it's just like you have infinite energy and you just like reanimate. And if you have stuff to sack, like you have a Field of the Dead, or you just have a way to make zombies, like in a Will Help deck, this is just so good. Sack Decayed Zombies, you just sack whatever junk you have lying around in like a Golgari deck. This card is ultra powerful. I can't believe it's so inexpensive right now. Try it out. It's a card you have to experience to understand how good it is. Just try it. Trust me. Coiling Rebirth. This is a gift card from Bloomburrow. 5 mana, so not the best rate, but you get something pretty sweet with it. Turns a creature from your graveyard, so it's also only your graveyard. Again, a point against it. But if you gift that card, and the creature isn't legendary, so a lot of conditions here, but like this is a fun one. You get a 1/1 copy of whatever you're reanimating. So, you know, go ham with that Archon of Cruelty. This is a very good card. I run it in Glarb. It always performs for me. Like, always happy to see this one. Try it out. It's not the best reanimation spell out there, but it is one of the most fun. And it can do stuff that no other reanimation spell can do, potentially, which I think makes it worth it. This is a card I've been really high on recently, and if you've watched any of my recent Glarb videos, you'll see this card doing some nutty things. I don't know what the left side does. I'm not even going to look at it or bother reading it. It's awful. I don't think I would ever cast it just out of principle. So just pretend like that flotsam side is not there, and let's just read the right side, the exquisite beauty of this right side, Jetsam, for 6 mana. Yeah, not a cheap one, and sorcery, unfortunately. So just play all the stuff to give yourself flash like I do, then it's no problem. Also, if you just cast this at sorcery speed, it's really, really good. It's worth 6 mana. 6 mana. Each opponent mills 3 cards, and then you can cast a spell from each opponent's graveyard without paying its mana cost. Do you have to pay life instead? Can you spend mana of any color? No, it's free. No life. Okay, but you can only play one of the 3 cards that were milled, right? No, you can play anything from their entire graveyard. What? So what you're telling me is this is Diluvian Primordial, like on crack? Because you can play anything, not just instants and sorceries like that card, which like always seems to whiff in my experience. This is like they mill 3, and then you can play anything. You can play their best creature, you can play a planeswalker, you can play sorcery, instant, whatever it is that is best in their graveyard, including the stuff that was milled, but not specific to just those cards. You can cast them for free. and then they'll get exiled instead of going back to the graveyard. Really powerful card. Definitely a game ender, and one that I think is flying under the radar. I would venture to say that most people have no idea what this card is, and I didn't either until semi-recently. So try that one out. It's really good. The only problem is that damn left side, which restricts it to Sultai decks, which is really annoying. I wish you could just like take a pair of scissors and cut it in half and like burn the left side, because that adding that green sucks, because it means you can only play it in blue, black, and green decks unless you rule zero it with your pod and blah, blah, blah. You don't want to get into that. So, play it in your Yarok, play it in your Glarb, but you can't really run it in just Dimir decks, unfortunately, which is sad because it's a great card. Funeral Room, Awakening Hall. So we're going to focus on the right side of this card, the Awakening Hall, but the left side is very relevant to this card because without it, the right side is not worth it alone. Like, if you were going to play the right side, you might as well just play Rise of the Dark Realms. But the fact that it's got that left side tacked onto it, it's like, well, why wouldn't I play this? It's so much better than Bastioner of Remembrance. Yeah, I don't get that 1/1 soldier or whatever, warrior or whatever the heck that card makes, but you get the left side, which is what you want in your deck. You're not running this card if you don't want the left side. Let's just be clear. But if you do, you get that out early. You get all the benefits of it. And then late in the game, you're like, oh yeah, I'll just unlock this right side. And they're like, okay, I'm going to counter that because of course I want to counter your 8 mana, like reanimate your whole graveyard effect. No, you can't counter it. You can stifle it. Are you running a stifle or a void slime? Probably not. So really, really powerful effect tacked on to an already great card is why Awakening Hall is on this list. Metamorphosis Fanatic. This is a miracle creature in black, which I don't believe we've ever seen before, and it really makes this card ultra powerful. So for those of you unfamiliar with Miracle, it's a mechanic that states, like, if this is the first card you draw in any turn, so like if it's your turn on your draw step, if you draw this, you can reveal it right away. If you forget to reveal it and you put it directly into your hand, you've missed your window to cast it with a miracle, because you can no longer prove that that was the card you drew for turn, right? But if you don't forget, and that's why it's got that like sunburst border on it to kind of remind you, like, make sure you don't forget to reveal this because it's not natural, right? So try to just remember that you have a miracle card in your deck if you have not played with the miracle mechanic, because otherwise it's really easy to screw this up. But anyway, like, assuming you don't mess it up, if it's the first card you drew in the turn, you can play it for its miracle cost right then. So if you have a way to draw a card at instant speed on an opponent's turn, and it is a Metamorphosis Fanatic, you can, boom, cast it for 2 mana right then. And if you do, you get a 4/4 lifelink, and then you get to reanimate a creature from your graveyard and give it a lifelink counter. So ultra powerful reanimation effect. That lifelink counter is no joke. Lifelink is a powerful mechanic, right? And putting it on a creature that you're reanimating is nuts. And don't even get me started on the fact that you can use something like Volrath Stronghold, not a cheap land, by the way. It's reserve list land, but very powerful land. Or if you're on a budget, something like Witch's Cottage, to cheat this right to the top of your deck. Or if you're running a Vampiric Tutor or Imperial Seal, this is a great target because you're going to be drawing it following turn because you just tutored it to the top of your deck. So definitely one to look at. This is a really strong card, and the price has come down quite a lot. It was like close to $20 for a while. So this is a good one to get in your collection before the price eventually goes back up again. I would say, like, if you could snag it for $5, that would be great. Even if you have to pay 10, I'd still pick it up. I think it's an excellent card. I would try to have one in your collection because it could end up being quite valuable. Redress Fate. This is another miracle card. Weird coincidence to have 2 miracle cards in the reanimation category. Well, not where I would expect them to be, but they're both from the same deck, so I guess it's not that big of a surprise because Amanatu Veil Piercer has the miracle mechanic associated with her. So Redress Fate, is a functional, close to a functional reprint of Replenish. It's got a few differences. First of all, it costs twice as much mana. Small difference. But if you miracle it, it costs the same, right? So if you miracle it, you're paying 4 mana and you're getting to reanimate not just all enchantments like replenish, but all artifacts and all enchantments from your graveyard to the battlefield. This is an ultra powerful effect. This card is so good. If you have a way to cheat it to the top of your library, there are many ways to do that. I mentioned a couple of them before: Vampiric Tutor, Imperial Seal, Mystical Tutor, Personal Tutor, Sensei's Divining Top, Scroll Rack. You know, there's that land Mystic Sanctuary in blue. You know, this is a card that you're going to be able to miracle. Like, you're going to find a way to do it. Even if you have to pay 8 mana for this because it got stuck in your hand and you don't have a way to get it back to the top of your library. You know, Brainstorm is another one that I failed to mention. Like, there are a lot of ways to cheat this to the top of your library, and if you can cast this for 4 mana, you're getting like 8 mana worth of value on this effect. Like, compare this to something like Brilliant Restoration. This card is no joke, and it's less than $1 right now. Yeah, I would get this. This card is so good. People are gonna look back on this video and say, that card was 49 cents. Oh my God, why aren't people buying 1,000 copies of it? Now, I'm not telling you to go out and buy 1,000 copies, but I might. 6. Hey, mono green creature in the reanimation category? What? Well, what does 6 do? 6 is a 3 mana 2/4 tree folk. When he attacks, you mill 3, and then you can bring a land from among them into your hand. Well, that's why he's here, right? Not exactly. That's more of a regrowth effect versus reanimation. Semantics. But he's got the ability that as long as it's your turn, you can retrace, which means discard a land, to cast non-land permanents from your graveyard. So any land that you have in hand can be discarded to cast any spell that's a permanent from your graveyard. So 6 is a very flexible, you know, we're going to see him in the Commander of the Year ranking too, because awesome commander. I have a deck guide and tons of videos on 6 if you want to check those out. Really fun, really powerful commander, and really just strong reanimation effect that can go in really any deck. Like, you don't need a lot of synergy to make this work. You're going to have some excess lands here and there, and he can usually get you a land, right, when you attack. And it's not that hard to attack with him. Like, at first, when I built the deck, I thought, oh, I'm going to need to play a bunch of like unblockable effects, like stuff like Brotherhood Regalia that we talked about earlier, or Silver Shroud Costume. But it turns out that a 2/4 just can get a free attack in like pretty frequently. It's not that hard to be able to send him safely. And you know, you're not guaranteed to get a land back because you're only milling 3 and then you get to return a land, but most of the time you will get a land. I'd say like 80% plus of the time you're going to get a land back. And then that makes it easier for you to be able to retrace as not as much as you want, but if you play stuff like Life from the Loam, you can really fuel this to the moon. So what's the winner of our reanimation category? I'm giving it to Redress Fate. I think this card is just bonkers. And, you know, like, I was very much on the fence between Metamorphosis Fanatic and Redress Fate, but like, Redress Fate is just, I don't see how this doesn't stand the test of time and just isn't just like one of the most powerful effects like this that we've ever seen. Replenish is a $70, $80 card. And part of that is because it's reserve list, it's a single printing, it's hard to get, but that effect is so powerful. And this hits artifacts too. Yeah, it's a little bit more restrictive because you have to like finagle to get that casting cost down to 4, but I don't think it's that hard to do. And like, this card just wins games like very easily. So don't sleep on this card. And you know, if it's 49 cents when you're watching this video, buy yourself a copy or 2. And I'm pretty sure you're not going to regret it.